Hello everyone, and thank you all for your attendance at this webinar. My name is Despina Dajani, and I am one of the co-leads of the use case, together with Ken Nezel from Pfizer. The purpose of this presentation is to speak about the clinical trial recruitment patient matching solution. In the next slides, we will start by introducing you to the clinical trials and the recruitment process. We will show you the current state and issues encountered in clinical trial recruitment. Also, we will proceed to demonstrate our future vision for the solution and the purpose of the integration of blockchain. Then, we are going to give you a breakdown of the value provided of this solution to its stakeholders, and we will show you the roadmap of how we're planning to develop the use case. First of all, what are clinical trials? Well, clinical trials are a type of research where people partake in a study that contributes to new medical knowledge. New treatments are developed, and they are ensured to be safe and effective through clinical trials. Clinical trials are designed for research purposes, not for routine care. So how do they work? The clinical trials are broken up into several phases, ranging from having a small number of 10 people to thousands of participants. As new treatments progress through phases, the scope of research increases. At each phase, there are multiple independent bodies that ensure the safety of the trial participants. So what is clinical trial recruitment? Each clinical trial has a carefully made set of criteria for who can participate. Discussions happen between the patient and the doctor at the clinical site, and the doctor explains the study, the benefits, and the risks. Clinical trials must find people who want to voluntarily participate and meet their criteria for inclusion. In general, recruiting for clinical trials has posed a significant challenge historically. So why clinical trial recruitment poses significant challenges to clinical research? 80% of trials fail to meet the enrollment timelines. 30% of those timelines on clinical trials are actually spent on the patient recruitment itself. A huge amount of $5.9 billion is spent annually on clinical trial recruitment itself. And even with the time and the money spent, only 5% or less of cancer patients enroll in clinical trials. Today, the study-centric recruitment methods are the norm. What happens is that studies find patients through the principal investigator, which is the doctor, who is actually recruiting them, or it happens through direct advertising. But we see in the future there are actually some emerging trends that could support and build upon this recruitment process through also enabling patient-centric recruitment methods where the patients themselves find the studies. In some of those trends we see, this includes an expansion of patient access to their health data. In US, the Office of the National Coordinator's Cures Act mandates access to patients for their own health information. There are also new tools that help patients put their data to use. For example, Apple Health gives iPhone users access to 400 health institutions in US, UK, and Canada. Also, there is a demonstrated willingness to participate in research, which is shown that from the fact that 80% of EU citizens say it would be acceptable to them to share their health data if the privacy and security are ensured. To unlock the potential of patient-centric approaches, we will need to make this trial pre-screening process more accessible. Currently, the process is the following. Joe, who is a potential trial participant, provides his medical information for trial A to the investigator of the site and asks whether there is a clinical trial matching for him. After he is pre-screened, the answer is unfortunately no. Then Joe goes through the same process for trial B, and that happens through a study website, but he receives no again as an answer. Finally, he tries again, and this is for trial C, and he receives a yes. As you can see, this process has a substantial amount of pain points. It is not friendly for patient use, there is a high cost involved for this process, and it is not efficient. The processes are duplicative, and the information is locked in silos. Now, Ken will speak to you about the future desired vision for this system.
Thanks, Despina. This is Ken Nessel from Pfizer. Let's now consider a future state that addresses the pain points that Despina was just describing. Here again, we see potential clinical trial participant Joe. But now Joe is using a web application. He provides some medical information about himself one time and records a permission to be matched to clinical trials. And this information is fed into a patient matching utility. This utility is already seeded with a catalog of pre-screening criteria from multiple studies across multiple study sponsors. A matching algorithm runs now to match Joe to relevant studies. And Joe can view on his screen in one place all the trials that match to his interest in diabetes. So to summarize the concept, we are creating a neutral, industry-wide utility to help patients or their healthcare providers more efficiently find clinical trials which match to their health profiles and interests. And this would be for any sponsor, industry or academic, and any patient or physician. The key features here are that first, the patient retains control of their data. They can grant access and revoke access at any time. A patient would also have increased visibility into how their data is used. They'll have access to a dashboard where they can see key metrics on match attempts and success rates. And a blockchain ledger is envisioned here as a key enabler of this use case, with the blockchain helping to ensure trust between all the parties involved. And fourth, redundant workflows can be eliminated. Right now, many sponsors create study-specific websites, and this shared utility could eliminate the need for all that redundant work. And finally, by pooling all sponsor efforts into a shared utility, we can make that utility meet the highest standards of data privacy and security. Let's now take a closer look at the patient experience in this future state. So first, the patient is going to be interacting with the matching utility through a web interface. And at the start, in step 1, the patient is going to enter some medical history about themselves. Then in step 2, the patient provides some additional information about their interests, as well as sharing permission that their data be accessed. And in step 3, the algorithm has now run, and the patient can view a list of potentially matching clinical trials. In 4, some of those trials may have additional specific questions, and the patient here can answer those questions to confirm that there's a good match between themselves and the prospect clinical trial. In step 5, now imagine this potential clinical trial participant has had a discussion with their doctor. They've identified a trial which they think is a good fit for them. By clicking on that share button, their contact information would be sent to a clinical site so that they could be contacted to come in for further screening and potential enrollment in the clinical trial. And in step number 6, this is the view of that dashboard. So a patient can be confident that even if the right match hasn't been made for them yet, they can see their data is working for them. Now in Slido, we have a question for you that we'd like you to answer at this point about whether you could see yourself as a user of this clinical trial matching utility. So let's address now the question, why blockchain? This matching utility just won't work without trust. Patients need to trust that their data is being used responsibly, And sponsors need to trust that the matching utility is fair and equitable in finding matches between patients and their trials. We see leveraging blockchain here as a way to enable this required trust. Operating the utility through a decentralized network means that no single party has undue influence. And we plan to have the full provenance of a matching transaction anchored to a blockchain. This is going to help ensure that the operation of the utility can be trusted by all parties. We believe there's a strong value proposition to this idea for all the stakeholders involved. For patients and patient advocacy groups, this is going to simplify that clinical trial participant journey. It's going to encourage participation in clinical research in the first place, and all the time enabling those patients to retain control of their health data. For those involved in conducting clinical trials, sponsors, clinical research organizations, clinical sites, this is going to accelerate the recruitment process. It's going to hopefully reduce recruitment costs by pooling investment, simplify operations, and it will allow all of us to demonstrate a patient-first imperative. And for physicians, and this is the participants' physicians, it's going to enable them to stay current on clinical trials and help them support their patients in finding the best fit clinical trial. So what does the roadmap ahead look like? Well, first we'll start with a pilot. We want to implement that as a proof of concept to demonstrate the value proposition. Then we'll look at expansion. Clinical trials take place all around the world, so we'll need to expand to support different markets, different languages, and different disease areas. Next, we think there are opportunities to make this even more convenient to patients by integrating into electronic medical records, so the patient doesn't have to re-enter information that already exists someplace else. Next, there's even more we could do in step 4 here about employing emerging technology that would further enhance privacy preservation. And lastly, we think that once we have this infrastructure in place, we could enable even other use cases, really any use case that requires the exchange of real-world data. So with that, I'm going to conclude and turn things over to Hernando to take us through the clinical trial e-consent use case.
Thank you to all of our presenters there. So we've come to the end of the 4 presentations, and before we jump into the live Q&A with the speakers, we're going to take a quick look at the results of the poll questions that were being posted during the presentations there. Now, if you've not already voted, you might have a couple of seconds while the poll question is on the screen just to get your vote in. And if you've got any questions related to the poll results, you can submit them via Slido, and we'll tackle them in the live Q&A with the speakers. So the first poll question that was asked by Kenan Despina during the e-recruitment presentation. And they asked, if you were interested in participating in clinical research, would you use the PharmaLedger patient matching utility to find relevant and appropriate clinical trials? And overwhelmingly, almost 3/4 of respondents have said yes, sounds like a useful tool, which is very encouraging. So that's a good resounding result for the use of that. Okay, so that takes us through the results of the poll. We're now going to open the live Q&A session with today's speakers. So we'll turn to Slido and we'll have a look. And the most popular question that we'll take first was about, have we analysed patient matching utilities in relation to GDPR? I think this was asked during the first presentation with Ken and Despina. So I don't know if Ken or Despina could maybe comment on that question for us, please.
Hi, this is Ken. I can take that question. So doing a full compliance risk assessment, it is part of our process. Actually, in PharmaLedger, there is a whole work stream focused on issues of legal ethics and compliance. So there's been a lot of work done there to sort of formalize a framework for PharmaLedger. In the case of this specific use case of the patient matching utility, we haven't yet done the full GDPR assessment because we are still in a design phase. And until we have our technical and information architecture sort of settled, we won't be able to do that assessment because we need to know specifically exactly which data elements we're collecting, our process for de-identifying data, where data is being stored. So that those all feed into a GDPR risk assessment, and we don't have those settled yet, but we know it's a part of our process. We know it's a critical part. And actually, we think it's part of our value proposition here because right now, many different companies are sort of pursuing the same idea of matching patients to trials in their own silos. And we're trying to eliminate that silo, pool the whole sort of ecosystem of sponsors together. And we think in pulling us together, we can come up with the best, the gold standard of compliance. And so that is one of our objectives and important to us, and we'll be getting to it soon.
Excellent, thank you, Ken. I think this next question is also one maybe you could answer. How would you communicate that the utility is safe? The communication would be worldwide, not specifically targeted. Would that be cost expensive? I think this was asked during your presentation, so can you pick up on that?
Sure, it's a great question. We've thought about a lot. It's really the question of how can we acquire patients into this utility? How would they become aware of it? How would they even know it exists, and how would they would trust it? So we are still sort of working that ideas around solving that problem. We think the key is really referrals. We need to find the parties that patients already trust and use them as referral sources into this matching utility. So we've had some preliminary conversations with patient advocacy groups because we know patients trust those groups. Those groups represent the patients, and our focus would be if we can convince those groups that what we're doing is aligned with patient interests, they could help be advocates and point patients into this matching utility. So that's our approach.
Super. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, our next question was asked during the e-recruitment presentation, so I don't know if Ken could pick this up. It was saying, are there considerations about monetary incentives for patients providing data for clinical trials?
Yes, this is Ken. I'll take that. So we are basically adhering to the standard practices around compensation for participation. We're not changing anything about how that works in the current state. I mean, typically patients are not financially incented to participate in trials. Some consideration may be given to the cost of their participation and some reimbursement for the cost, but they're not paid to participate, as that raises ethics issues and could spoil the impartiality of the research. So we're not changing any of that. We don't have any plan through this solution to compensate people in any way that they're not in the current state.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Okay, our next question was asked during the e-recruitment presentation, so maybe Ken could pick this up. How would you guarantee that no excess information is given or asked for to a company that does not need these data for trials?
Yeah, hi, this is Ken. One of our design principles, and probably the primary one, is really the idea that patients own their data. And we want to really make that sort of primary in everything that we design with this use case. So that's why we do have this idea of a patient providing a consent or a permission, let's say, for their data to be used to match to a clinical trial, and that they can revoke that permission at any time. And with this notion of an algorithm, which is doing the matching. So in that way, it's not necessarily leaking data to different companies. The algorithm itself is the one that's performing the match. So the patient can maintain the ownership, and when they turn off that permission, the algorithm can no longer see their data, or match them to a clinical trial. So that's part of what we're trying to do here to preserve the privacy of the patient and make sure there's no data leakage to any other parties. And as I mentioned when I was referring the future roadmap, there are even more intriguing sort of future emerging technologies in this space that we could see in the future. Not part of the current design, but perhaps part of the future design, where instead of pulling patients' data into a matching algorithm, you push the matching algorithm out to the patient. And so you can imagine a patient maybe having the data on their mobile phone, their own data on their mobile phone, and then never having to leave their mobile phone. The algorithm goes to it rather than pulling the data from the patient. So this is a part of the picture here, and part of what we're trying to do to ensure the primacy of patient self-sovereignty and patient data ownership.
Super. Thank you, Ken. Okay, so let's have a look and see what the top question is. And it is a question related to e-recruitment, I think. So it says, will there be an impact on inclusiveness if patients need to access an app to be included in trials if they don't have a smartphone? Is there any solution to that? So I think that's probably a question for Ken and Despina.
Hi, this is Ken Nessel. I can respond to that one. So no, there won't be an impact on inclusiveness. In fact, our whole goal with this use case is to expand access to clinical research. So the traditional ways that people today get involved in clinical trials would still exist to them. So they could, use contacting by phone, a clinical site or a call center, or having their doctor connect them to the primary investigator. So all those traditional means would still exist. Nobody would be blocked from those traditional means. But in fact, we think that actually creating this utility would help expand access, right? Because in a way, it becomes a democratizing effect on access to clinical trials, because all you need is access to the internet, right? You don't need to necessarily have access to a top clinical site or clinical research center. Even if you don't, you can still discover where the clinical research is being conducted independently. So in a way, it's does democratize access to the research. So we actually see it as being pro access to clinical research, and in no way restricting that access. Thanks for the question.
Super, thank you, Ken. And the final question I see there, I think this is for Ken and the e-recruitment. How would governance work of such a matching tool? So Ken, can you pick this up?
Sure. A good question. And as Zinnia just said, we're still sort of designing the governance model for all of these use cases. But at least conceptually, there would be a governance board that would be responsible for like the operation of the matching utility. And so, for example, if there's a matching algorithm that's being used in this case to match potential patients to potential clinical trials, and let's just say that in the future there needs to be some adjustment to that matching algorithm to improve its performance. We're imagining, like most of these governance boards work, there would be some consensus effort amongst them to say, are we ready to release this next version of the algorithm into production to improve the matching algorithm's performance? And then this governance board, which would be made up of the various stakeholders in this use case. And again, in this case, we're talking about both public and private sponsors of clinical research. This governance board would vote on, and there need to be some consensus amongst them before that next version of the matching algorithm would be released into the matching utility. So that's generally how we're imagining it to work in the future.
Our next question is sort of a wider question. So maybe Zinnia or one of the project coordinators for PharmaLedger can answer this. Blockchain has been used without specificity. Which blockchain platform? And how do you intend to scale the voluminous data processing and use?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Xenia, go ahead.
When we talk about the PharmaLedger platform, okay, I mean, when we talk about the platform, we talk about the PharmaLedger platform. So all the use cases are built as applications on the top of the platform that we have designed and that we are deploying. So actually, in our platform, we are based in a new concept, which is called OpenDSU. And this concept is key in the platform and it stands for Open Data Sharing Units. And it's a technology that works as a container for data and the code being built in the blockchain. It's a container that is cryptographically secure and anchored in the blockchain and in the control of the user. So what is behind of this platform and this architecture that is being deployed and designed and built in PharmaLedger is that from what we start in this project right from the beginning, our goal has been to be agnostic to the blockchain technology and remain as neutral as possible to the blockchain technology that is selected by each of the use case solutions. So for this purpose, for example, the OpenDSUs are also blockchain technology agnostic. They support any kind of programmable blockchain technology. So this is what we are building at the level of PharmaLedger. We're building not only the capabilities, but also the infrastructure to support this. The platform is foreseen to be scalable. And actually, right now, the applications that are in the top are the ones that are representing all the 8 use cases, okay, that PharmaLedger is developing, okay, the ones that are in the supply chain and the ones that are in health data and clinical trials that have been presented today. But the idea is that it will host new use cases and scale for this data and support the applications on the top of this architecture that is and platform that is being built.
Actually, Xenia, there is a follow-up question which has come up, which is who and which suppliers would make these blockchains a reality? This is costly work and there are no off-the-shelf solutions. So can you talk about the supplier issue there?
Well, this is something that is being discussed from the beginning of the project, okay, together with the design of this platform and the PharmaLedger infrastructure. We are putting together a whole work package and task, okay, to define how it's going to be the governance of the platform. And in this case, everything is being defined in this work package. And still, there is, I mean, as commented before, we're in design phase. This is not a decision taken, but we are designing all this, let's say, approach that will go together with the governance of the platform and the blockchain produced in PharmaLedger.
Actually, there's many questions coming in for you, Xenia. There's another one here. If you could describe the process for achieving agreement on the data governance by all the consortium for all or any of the studies that are going on.
Okay, so as commented from the beginning of the project, we have focused on the governance of the blockchain. But through all the developments, okay, and right now, for example, we have approached areas such as data interoperability through the DSUs, okay, adoption of standards, integration of standards as such as part of the data management. And now we just have been here for a year. And we are in our second year. And in this second year, we're starting what is called the sustainability approach of PharmaLedger. And in this sustainability approach, okay, is integrated what it's going to be or what it needs to be done and designed as part of the data governance. So preliminarily, what we have in our work to do, it's set out as a framework that to define the clear roles and responsibilities and interdependencies of those roles, okay? So this includes to introduce data policies, principles, data policies as common principles, let's say, for the governance body that is taking on the blockchain, guidance and working practices in the area of data management to support what is the data governance. So this is something that we are starting now as part of the sustainability plan.
Super. Thank you, Xenia. Our next question, I think this is a sort of a high-level question, so maybe Xenia could pick this up. How to join PharmaLedger? It's asked by someone who says they have developed a scalable use case that fits 100%. Xenia.
Yes. Okay, right now we're in the phase of developing the architecture and the platform. So we interact with other use cases, also the projects and initiatives, but we will open for all these use cases and scalable use cases, okay, when we finish part of the deployment and finish the project phase. But for sure, okay, you can contact us at contact@pharmaledger.eu. We receive a lot of the interactions through there, and also we will be also very interested in see the trials that are going and that might be fitting, okay, for PharmaLedger as such, for sure. So either through the website or through our email, for sure.
Yeah, sure. Very good. Our next question, I think, is for Xenia to answer. Who will manage these blockchain platforms? Xenia.
Well, it's defined how it's going to be managed. Since day one that I started this project, we have in parallel a task and an area that is defining the governance of the project as such. So we've been evaluating different models. We have some recommendations internally, okay, to how to approach this. And this is going to be defined and really shaped for the end of the project to see how the governance and the management of the platform is going to be provided. So it's in process right now.
Super. Thank you, Xenia. The next question is, when could patients expect solutions to be available? So Xenia, if you could pick this one up.
Yes, actually these solutions, okay, will be taken to pre-operative environment at the end of the project, that's 2022. So following that will be, and the idea is that they will be productized, okay, to be allowed for patients and other users to be used as such. However, from now through the patients organization, just to say that if patients want to see and want to collaborate in the development, part of what our idea and part of what our practice is that we're doing co-development. So actually through patients organization, you can come and participate and provide your insights. So how would you like to see these applications in the future? So it's a great insight for PharmaLedger to have the insights from the patients as well as from health providers. We have some already in the partnership as commented, as well as the patients organizations that are in the project. So please, it would be great if you want to participate and provide insights. So contact the patients organization to also support your view in PharmaLedger.
Super. Okay, Xenia, I think this next question you might also be able to help us with. Given that there are other similar solutions in development, how will you build the critical mass to ensure PharmaLedger is successful?
Well, that's right, okay, but we are doing so also from the beginning. I mean, together with governance, we are also having some other task that is building this critical mass, okay. It goes to patient through patients organization. We are building also a relationship with other projects, with other initiatives, not only in blockchain, but also a regulatory, let's say, level, okay. So we are networking and actually building this critical mass to really disseminate when ready all the platform and have already a community that goes technically and as users, okay, around PharmaLedger when it's ready.
Thank you. And I think you might be able to help us with this next question as well. Will Big Pharma own these solutions?
Well, these solutions, the ones that are built now, okay, are part of the consortium. So the consortium is rules and have, okay, several documents that are called agreements, and behind these agreements there are IPRs. But I mean, they are collaborative. I mean, this is a PPP, and all developments right now are done under collaborative approach. So it's part of the PharmaLedger and part PharmaLedger consortium, and however, this will be transferred to the next generation of PharmaLedger, let's call it like this, okay, which will have its own governance.
Thank you. I think just given the time, we're just going to take one more question. The next question is probably maybe to Xenia or one of the team in terms of the technology. How many ledgers and nodes do you have on a possible chain code?
Okay, I'll try to answer the question. Just to comment that maybe when we say this, we're missing some concepts or bringing some concepts from the Hyperledger. So the first thing to comment in this area is that we are blockchain agnostic, okay? So we can use Hyperledger, Ethereum, Enterprise, or any other. Also, as commented, our platform is based on the DSU. So the DSU could be a micro ledger, and we reduce the need of chain code or smart contracts, okay? We put the logic, okay, inside of the DSU as such to support this approach. So this is, I mean, this concept, I guess, comes a little bit as commented for the Hyperledger. So actually, we have a little bit an additional direction that is based on DSU as a micro ledger as such. I'm not sure if also someone else want to comment here.
Okay, so I think that covers all of the questions that we've been that have been submitted. So thank you to everyone who's asked a question today. But with that, we've come to the end of the second Public PharmaLedger webinar. Thank you to all the speakers who've presented today, and to the production team who've made the event happen. And thank you to the audience for attending and for your questions and taking part in the polls during the event. We hope you found it interesting. As I said earlier, a recording of these webinars is available via the PharmaLedger website and the PharmaLedger YouTube channel. And on the website, you can subscribe to the PharmaLedger newsletter, where you'll receive updates on the progress of the project. And you can also, on the website and through the newsletter, find the dates for our future webinars, which are coming up later this year. But until then, we look forward to seeing you at the next event, and thank you for your attendance today. Thank you.